Welcome to the Victims Advocate podcast, where we explore current events, crime, security, and insights into advocacy for victims of violent crime. My name is Brandon Stein, and I am the Victims Advocate. Helping victims of violent crime is what I do, and you can find me at www.steinlaw.com or www.victimadvocate.com. Let's hit it. Welcome to the Victims Advocate podcast with Brandon Stein. My name is Brandon Stein. I am the Victims Advocate. I'm really excited, really excited for someone who I've actually worked with for years and has been in the industry for years. I'm here with Russell Kolins. For lack of better words, he's a security expert. That's what he does. Russ, I appreciate you coming on, my man.
Well, thank you for thinking of me, and happy to be here.
Yeah. So, I want to make sure I have it correct, because one thing I do know about you is, aside from the you have Marine Corps experience, right?
I do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But before you got into what your current position is, you held a rank in the Marine Corps, and you served in Vietnam. And then I want to say for the past 50-ish years, you've been in private security, as serving as a consultant and expert, right?
Well, that's true. But it first started out being a private detective and conducting investigations, and then working with the insurance industry, doing a lot of risk assessments of insureds for their actuaries and their the process that they go through to help make their insureds do a better job. So I did that for many years. I actually became a consultant in 1991 and became an expert witness in 1991 when I had my first case as an expert witness. And so that became more of a consulting period of time in the beginning of that up until now.
So when you're coming out of the Marine Corps, what prompts the decision to go into, I guess, private investigations and that arena? Was there something in the Marine Corps where you had certain responsibilities, or was it just an interest you had?
Well, sure. So I was involved in intelligence, and part of the intelligence was security, investigation, conducting interviews, interrogations, etc. And that was the precursor to my getting into the field that I'm in now. And as you know, Vietnam vets, when they returned from Vietnam, we didn't get treated very well. As a matter of fact, I got into a fight on the plane coming back from California after I was discharged. I had bottles thrown at me, rocks, and it was very discouraging coming back. But I met a lawyer by the name of A. Charles Peruto. He was the most famous criminal defense lawyer in Philadelphia. And he took a liking to me, and he says, look, he said, you've got this training to do investigations. I need an investigator right now. And he gave me his first case. I found a witness for him, brought him to court, and that's what started my career. Things worked out. It was practically handed to me. I had a penchant for that. That's what I liked doing. I got a license almost immediately through Mr. Peruto, and he started my career. Here I am today.
So in doing private investigations, I mean, that was, I guess, roughly 20 years before you started really serving as an expert, if I heard you right.
That's right. So that's what gave me my experience. I tried to finish college at night. I went to Temple for 2 years prior to enlisting in the Marine Corps, Temple University in Philadelphia. I tried to finish up at night. I got approximately 100 credits, but back then you had to go to school and attend every class. There was no remote learning at that time. Technology wasn't there. So I couldn't attend every class, and I had to drop out. Eventually, I got involved with a remote degree program with Southwestern College, and eventually got a Bachelor of Science degree in security management. And that wasn't until 2008. So from 2005 to 2008, I was able to complete my college degree.
Yeah. So, well, better late than never. So Before I get to your consulting work and your expert work, I did want to talk to you about you were an owner of a nightclub. That I know. Or a tavern or a nightclub. I want to say, was it the Jersey Shore? Remind me.
Well, it wasn't the Jersey Shore, but it was close. It was called Private Eyes, by the way.
Yeah.
And
Well
yeah,
named.
it was a very large rock and roll bar. It was a bar during the daytime, a nightclub at night. We had great entertainment, including we had the Guess Who a couple of times, and some other big name groups, and local bands. So it was a very popular place.
And in owning a club, you obviously at that point, this was, I want to say, the 80s, right?
Right, from 1981 to 1991.
Right. So in owning a club for a decade and a bar for a decade, given the experience you had, were there certain things as an owner that you, I guess, didn't realize existed until you started owning an establishment like this, from a security standpoint, where wow, I didn't realize the risk of this, something along those lines?
Well, actually, no, for me, because of the work that I was doing, I was already conducting risk assessments at bars and nightclubs and hotels and other commercial properties. So I was very much aware of that. By the way, when I was 15 years old, I worked as a doorman at a place called the Shamrock in Wildwood, New Jersey. So at 15, 16, 17, I had that experience. And I had a very good mentor. The owner of the Shamrock, Pat Ward, was the quintessential bar owner. So I got a lot of training from him. Also, when I was in the Marine Corps, I worked at the Staff NCO Club in Camp Lejeune, Carolina, in between my training programs. So I got a lot of great training there. Coming back and then doing risk assessments with the insurance industry and working for different bars, nightclubs, etc., I got to know the ins and outs of those businesses. And every business is as different as a fingerprint. So if you have two bars next door to each other, the one bar on the right side could be very different than the one on the left side. So you have to have your own policies and procedures for each bar. One bar can't use the policies and procedures from the other bar for various reasons. And we can get into that if you want. But getting into my bar, I already knew about this bar. I worked at that bar on Saturday mornings during the wintertime when I was in junior high school and high school. And I would go there and clean the bar. And Willie Moscone, who was a very famous pool shark, would come in on some Saturday mornings and hold court. And I would clean the table, polish the balls, hold the money, and I would ride home on my bicycle with $100, $150 in my pocket. Back in those days, that was $1 million.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was very familiar with the business, and so when I started it, I knew I had to write my own policies, had to develop my own procedures, do my own hiring, and I had 9 security guards and did all the training myself. So I knew that what was happening, I was on top of it, and I knew exactly what was going on. So it was hands-on.
Yeah, so when you talk about risk assessment for a bar, well, first, risk assessment is what? Risk assessment from what the risk of crime is in that particular establishment, and you assess, I don't know, vulnerabilities, if you will?
Well, it's in the vulnerability, and that assessment, by the way, is an analysis of security weaknesses and opportunities for criminal activity. A security survey is for collecting information based on the vulnerability assessment. And so by getting that understanding what your vulnerabilities are, now you can determine the adequacy of the countermeasures you need to employ.
So is it, I equate it to like if you have an insurance agent come in and they're doing an appraisal of your home, you want to get insurance, you're maybe in a flood zone, they check your roof, they do an assessment and they say, well, you're at risk for X, Y, and Z, so here's what your premium's going to be, because we see that there's a certain level of risk here. Is it the same concept, obviously, in the security context?
Somewhat, but in the bar business, because there's alcohol involved, there's an inherent risk in that business.
Yeah.
And that inherent risk is the danger of physical fights. And I just got back from West Palm Beach and testified in a case against a bar in West Palm Beach, a very popular bar there. And it happened to be a Marine who got a beer mug smashed over his head and seriously injured. So in that case, there was no training, there were no policies, there were no procedures, there was no security plan to deal with a situation that was brewing for a long period of time, where one of the patrons, and I wasn't allowed to talk about him being drunk or anything yesterday, but we know that this guy was drinking, and he was drinking, and he became very antagonistic against the victim in this case, calling him names. I'm not going to get into the names because they're really bad. You can't say these names on TV, actually, so I'm not going to say them to you.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is there was this threat, but because there was no plan, they had one doorman who was outside on the sidewalk, and two bartenders. But no one did anything about it because they weren't trained. They didn't have a plan. And what happens is this guy goes over and smashes our guy over the head with a beer mug. So when you do the assessment, you understand there's the inherent risk. There's alcohol involved. You have to have responsible alcohol training, responsible alcohol management training. In Florida, they have what's called the Vendors Act. In other states, it's required that bartenders, bouncers, servers get trained in responsible alcohol management, like the TIPS program. I'm a TIPS instructor, the TAM program. And that not only deals with the effects of alcohol, but how to handle people who are intoxicated.
So when you're dealing with a bar, obviously the variable that you throw in there is alcohol and intoxicated patrons that may increase the risk. Does the assessment, when you're doing a risk assessment, does it change when you're looking to, let's say, a retail shopping center or an apartment complex, for instance, in terms of what the risks of crime are there as opposed to at a bar?
Right. And so part of that risk assessment is getting the crime stats for that area, getting to know what is what's trending here, what are the vulnerabilities for this particular area. So you have different areas. In Miami, you've got some areas that are worse than others. In other cities, you have other areas that are worse than others. And so the crimes are different. You might have more trending of car thefts, theft from vehicles, which defense lawyers always like to say, well, that's a crime against property, isn't it, Mr. Kolins? And the bottom line is yes, but people have been killed because they walk up on the perpetrators who are conducting this theft and say, hey, what are you doing? And they wind up getting shot and killed. Very famous case in New Jersey, right up the road here, where a lawyer came upon three perps breaking into his Range Rover. He was with his wife and family. They just did their Christmas shopping and said, what are you guys doing? And the guy turned around, boom, and shot and killed this lawyer right in front of his wife and kids. So, and car thefts, by the way, not to get off the beaten path here,
yeah.
But when cars are stolen, cars are normally used in the acts of crimes. So those are incidents that we use as part of the crime analysis. So it's not just a crime against property. But then you look at, hey, what kind of other crimes do you have here? Do we have a lot of robberies? Do we have homicides, shootings? And that goes into an equation that develops the plan for the particular business. Malls, shopping centers have their own inherent problems, shoplifting, and then purse snatching, people walking back to their cars in the parking lot. Lots of crimes in the parking lot, so you need parking lot security. But the adequacy of that security and the level of security is based upon the risk assessment and the vulnerabilities that are assessed to that particular business and property.
So when you look at the property, for instance, an apartment complex, is the reason why you look at prior crime on the property, whether it's violent crime or not, it also establishes the propensity for crime to occur, and many times maybe crime can even escalate as there's theft after theft after theft, and eventually, boom, there's a shooting or a robbery.
Absolutely. And in Florida, I think the courts now have kind of narrowed down the immediate area, because there's no really definition of the immediate area. But what I've found since COVID is that the courts have narrowed the immediate area down to a quarter-mile radius. And so you want to do a crime analysis based on the crimes for a 3 to 5 year period prior to the date of the incident. Or if it's not a litigation case, if you're just doing an assessment, you want to get a 3 to 5 year period of time of crimes. Then do the analysis on that to see what are the vulnerabilities for this particular property. Is this area a magnet for car thefts, a magnet for burglaries, a magnet for shootings? If that's the case, then you have to adjust the level of security for that property.
And I'd imagine you also look to, well, is there a lot of gang-related crime there, or drug dealing, and so there's all different levels of crime, especially at apartment complexes. So what I did want to ask you is, I'm assuming you're familiar with, or you've heard of the tort reform that passed here in Florida a couple of years ago, and one aspect of it dealt with negligent security, and in particular apartment complexes, where if there are certain, precursors to security measures that are substantially taken by an apartment complex, there could be a presumption against their liability. So it basically gets them off the hook. Can you, detail for me, because I'm looking down the list of some of these things that they just have to do, and then it seems like they're off the hook, whether it's lighting, security systems, deadbolts in dwelling doors, locking devices on windows, locked gates adjacent to pools, which is crazy. I mean, what does that have to do with a shooting? So have you seen any of that in your practice, I guess within the past year or two?
Oh, absolutely. So here's what happened. And by the way, in order to do an assessment now in Florida of these this called Ep.10 assessments, I'll talk about that. Is
Ep.10, crime prevention through environmental design?
That's correct.
Okay.
And so, by the way, I teach that at the University of Louisville, but that's another story. So here you have the tort reform in Florida. This is in March of 2023, right?
2023, yep.
And so what happened was the insurance industry said to the then governor, who was a candidate for the president at that time, hey, we have a PAC, and we're going to give you $100 million. This is no secret. And what we need is some tort reform. And we're tired of paying these $100 million plus verdicts of shootings, people getting shot and killed in our apartment complexes. So as part of the, I don't know if you want to say quid pro quo, whatever it was, yep. The governor went to the legislature and said, we need tort reform. And as part of the tort reform with regard to apartment complexes, they came up with this plan. And it's called HB 837. And the HB 837, this House bill said, look, if the apartment complexes, and by the way, it's not if, it's that they're mandated to do it beginning January 1, 2025, to do these assessments. And the assessments included exactly what you just talked about. So the deadbolt has to be at least a 1-inch throw. Then you have to have every window with a working lock. You have to have cameras on all the ingress, egress, and save those the videos for 30 days. The lighting, I don't know where they came up with the lighting idea, but yes, lighting has to be good. It has to be uniform and consistent. That's the most important thing about it. But they came up with this criteria that's 18 inches off the ground and 0.18 foot candles. That doesn't even meet the standards of the IES, or the Illuminating Engineer Society. But that's what is mandated with this HB 837, which is now the Florida Statute 768.0706. So these assessments have to be done. And here's what the interesting thing is.
So, sorry, if they have these assessments, is there some sort of certificate they have from a licensed personnel that comes to the property and says, hey, assessment done, so there's now a presumption against liability if a shooting, let's say, occurs on our property and someone gets shot and killed?
That's right. That can be used as an affirmative defense. And the assessments can only be done by FCPs, that's Florida Crime CPTED professionals. You have to go through the AG's office and take 2 different courses, which totals 64 hours. I've been trained and certified by the state, and I've conducted a lot of these assessments myself. But I also have an office in Florida that's run by Nancy Rasmussen, formerly of the AG's office, and I have teams now doing these assessments throughout the state. But the assessments can be used as an affirmative defense. Here's a problem, though, is that there are some people who think that they only have to do a random sample of apartments. And what they do is they go in and say, well, we'll charge you a lot less money so to make it palatable for you, and we'll just do the empty apartments. And there might be 300 plus apartments in a complex, and 10 of them are vacant, and they'll do those 10. That is not what the law says. The law says every unit has to be done. And that's what we do. We do every unit, and we make sure that the compliance is there so that we can issue a certificate of compliance.
Yeah, so Russ, I think, I'm going off memory, I think the statute articulates substantial compliance. They need to show that they substantially complied with this list of items. So I think the problem with this statute is, well, what constitutes substantial compliance? And it sounds like what you're saying is a lot of these apartment complexes are, once again, cutting corners, saving money. They're not doing it to protect the victims of crime or potential victims of crime. They're doing it to save money and get behind this statute that was passed by our legislature so that they could have a presumption against fault. And then that's where you're coming in, I guess, to do it, I guess, properly, if you will.
That's right. And so if you talk to anyone at the AG's office, they cannot tell you what substantial means. But the bottom line is that substantial is the every unit, every window, every door. And let's talk about that gate at the pool. The gate at the pool is only for intruders. It's supposed to keep intruders out.
It seems ridiculous. It seems freaking ridiculous to me if we're talking about a bill and then a law that relates to safety from crime on property, but we're worried about pool locks. I would think entry gates are important, mechanical gates, guard houses, things that actually keep trespassers out, not keep people out of the pool that shouldn't be there.
Yeah, no, I get you, and I agree with you. And it's kind of, it's silly. We have one client right now, they have a 3-foot fence around their pool, and they have a gate that has a magnetic lock on it. But that doesn't meet the requirements under HB 837. Anybody can climb over a 3-foot fence. And most of the places where we've been, the fences are 3 feet. Some are 4 feet. There are a couple have been 5 feet. But anyone can still access it. This is not designed to keep a child out. HB 837 FS 768.07.06 is not meant to keep children out. It's meant to keep intruders out. So, yeah, it is silly, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. The lighting criteria doesn't make a lot of sense either.
Yeah, I think what you said at the outset makes the most sense is that there was a super PAC, there was someone who was running for election. There were a lot of, I'm sure, lobbyists in the insurance industry and super PACs with a lot of money to spend. And unfortunately, big companies can contribute a lot more to campaigns than just the little guy. And that's who, that's who we help. So, look, I got a million more things that I wanted to discuss with you, especially on this tort reform. We didn't even get into the training requirements and what else did I see here that's crazy? Crime deterrence measures that they have to take. It's asinine to me. But in any event, we don't have all the time in the world to go into this. That's why maybe it would be a topic for another day. But there's a lot into this, and like you say, it's just really coming to light now, January 1, 2025, where now it's a requirement. So it'll be interesting to see how the courts deal with it. But Russ, I know you're busy. I know you flew up from Palm Beach. You have a trial like every other day. But let me ask you this, just because I see the insignia on your sweatshirt there. Kolins Security Group is the name, and if there's anyone out there, who would have to find you, what's the best way to reach you, or how do they find you?
Well, they can go to the website, collinssecurity.group.com.
Easy.
And, or just call 215-735-2131. If we have 800 numbers too, I don't remember those, but, and we work all over the country. So I'm going to be in California Texas next week, and in California the following week. So, thank you very much for having me.
Interesting stuff. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brandon Stein, and I am the Victim's Advocate. Your voice matters, and if you or someone you know needs representation, visit steinlaw.com or victimadvocate.com for more information. See you next time.